Can you say, I will never, ever look at my past with any regret? Stop beating yourself up for decisions that are no longer your concern. Start today wherever your 2 feet are. Let go of any regret that you have because there's nothing but lessons in all of it. Just be proud of the person who has come out of it and own the decisions that you made. We all second guess. It's so easy to be a Monday morning quarterback looking back with that 2020 hindsight, knowing exactly what we should or should not have done. But every decision that you have made brought you to where you are today. And at this point, none of those decisions should even concern you. Just let them go and start where you are, using any lessons that you have learned to move forward. It is human to question, to wonder, would it have been better if? Would we have been happier if? Would things have turned out differently if? Should we have? Was it a mistake to? Did I do the right thing? All of that is nothing but wasted energy, and none of us have any extra of that to just throw away. You did the best that you could with the information that you had and the resources that were available, being the person who you were then. So just own those decisions. They are exactly what you needed to bring you here, where you are in the present. So start from here today, right wherever your 2 feet are. What can you learn from those past decisions that can inform your future? Where do you go from here? There are lessons in all of it. Be proud of the person who has come out of it and own the decisions that you made. Hey guys, it's Jen. So today we are going to finish up our monster size mom episode, continuing with our girl power conversation and the 50th episode celebration week. Part one was episode 49, and this is episode 51. And this week's Jen is Zen that dropped on Wednesday was my 50th episode, which I think is super exciting and it's something to celebrate. So my allergies are a disaster right now. I'm a total hot mess, so I sound congested. So you're going to have to bear with me because I am excited to tackle this second part. If you haven't already listened to part one, you shouldn't be lost. By any means, you're totally fine, but definitely go back in after and listen to part one when you're finished. This has probably been one of my favorite episodes to do. Totally. It definitely has been the biggest. And I think it's because it's not really one topic. It's kind of like quite a few topics, but they all go together really nicely and very organically. And there's so much that I really wanted to get to. So earlier in the week, we talked about being the default parent, as well as how working moms or moms who are looking to get back into the workforce can find what is typically referred to as work-life balance, but that I like to call work-family integration. Because realistically, a balance implies like even amounts on both sides of the scale, or I guess instead of scale, it would be our lives. When in actuality, if we truly want to find that kind of contentment that we're associating with a quote unquote balance, we need to find better integration of these two main parts of our life. Well, today we will continue that conversation by now looking at the other side of this great mommy war. Ugh, if you haven't yet listened to the first part, please know that I'm using that mommy war term in total sarcasm because I loathe that women have been pitted against each other. We're like forced to join a camp of either being working moms or stay-at-home moms, when in actuality, we're all better together by being moms. And that is what we should focus on. Because after that whole great mommy war debate from back when we were new moms, if we fast forward these 14 or 16 or 18 years, no one really talks about how that actually went for us and where either choice has left us. Besides, as we said, we are the default parent either way. So it all ends up the same. So last time we talked about 7 tips for work-life integration. And today we will continue with a conversation about our career relaunch with these 6 tips for re-entering the workforce and how to build your personal brand. Okay, so as I promised last time, there is something for everyone in both episodes. Working moms, stay-at-home moms, work from home moms, all of us. There are no mommy wars here because we all know that the grass isn't greener on the other side of that fence. Nope, girl, it is a lovely green, raging full of weeds on both sides of that fence. So, in part one, I ended the show by teasing you that I would explain a story about someone who was just off being a mommy, as a direct quote, of course. So, okay, I served on the university's reappointment, tenure, and promotion committee for quite a number of years. And anyway, at one point in time, it was probably like a few years after I was tenured. And this was back when I still figured that I would eventually go up for full professor, which is the highest promotion that you can get. But unlike going up for tenure, it's totally optional. And so I thought I'd take a few years and then I would eventually go up for it. At that point, I was kind of at a fairly less than productive point in my career. I mean, many people go through it immediately after tenure simply because you go to graduate school and then your dissertation, and then there's like all of the intensity and stress and work and everything of trying to get to tenure. And so then you get to tenure and you're like, I finally get to breathe for a second. And, also I had 3 small kids and I had already run myself ragged, trying to do the baby and toddler and preschool years while I was simultaneously doing my tenure years. So it was time for me personally. I needed to focus on them, and see, that's what I actually mean by when I say that at different points in your life, in order to have that work-life integration, it's not that you're trying to balance the same amount on either side. I had been focusing more on my career. And so then it kind of like, okay, well, my family needed more of my focus at that particular time. So we had a candidate going through who was going up for full professor, and she had great materials. She had totally the necessary production to be promoted. Well, one member of the committee mentioned that there had been a gap in her work. Okay. It was just in her publications, mind you. She was still teaching full time, still doing everything else. She still had everything, but there was a gap. Another member of the committee, who was a woman nonetheless, she replied, well, she was off being a mommy. Oh, the fuck what if she was off being a mommy? She was still doing her job. She still had everything she needed for this promotion. Yet you had to explain a not unproductive, but a less than productive period of time as being because she was off being a mommy? Are you fucking kidding me? Now, if I was today's Jen, that is exactly how I would have responded. But alas, I was not. So I kept my mouth shut. I voted for her to be promoted. And I made the decision that I was never going to apply for full. And despite having the production necessary to apply, I still have not. I should, though. And I should totally lead my materials with, you'll note a gap in my productivity when I was off being a mommy. Okay. Yeah. So it's probably better. I just keep my mouth shut and I never go up. Anyway, I tell you that story because the woman who applied, she was working full time and she was still criticized by another woman, which is made it even more infuriating to me. But she was working and was still criticized for taking some time to be a mommy. Now, imagine how hard it is for women who have a 12 or 15 or whatever year gap in their resume because they were off being a mommy. Yep. And I hear it over and over again. The working world responds just about the same as that woman on my committee. Only instead they hear comments like, you're great, but we're looking for someone with more digital experience. Or you obviously had a lot of achievements in the past, but the job you did doesn't really exist anymore. So this is the final part of our conversation here. We're going to talk about the other side. We already have talked about the struggles of the working mom of teens, primarily in trying to find the basic resources of time and energy and attention to focus on both their career and their home lives. Now, this is definitely the case for working moms with kids of all ages, but the invisibility of working moms of teens makes it even more challenging. Plus, it's often coupled with that the women are more advanced in their careers, and so they have higher demands. Working moms of teens continue to struggle with feeling connected and engaged with their teens. And many then of their teens and tweens find themselves very supervised in both their activities and their use of technology, which we know can definitely lead to problematic behavior. In fact, because of these concerns and the realization of many working moms that TikTok, the clock is ticking and their teens will soon be grown and off, there is a small but growing group of working moms, and I know a couple personally, who have been working the entirety of their kids' lives, and yet they're opting out of the workforce when their kids hit the teen years. More common, though, is the flip side of this, that they stayed at home with younger kids and they're rejoining the workforce as their kids reach these teen years. Primarily, research shows that they are doing this due to feelings of sadness, loneliness, frustration, and boredom. Okay. Stay at home moms of kids of age see these same adverse effects, but moms of teens exhibit them more because realistically, teens don't need parents in any way near as much as when they were younger. Like the physical needs and the time needs aren't the same. So they may even not even be in the house as much. They're off in lives of their own. And so they're off doing friends and extracurriculars and jobs. And so the stay-at-home moms may often find themselves lonely, bored, or questioning their role in this relationship. So research also shows that stay-at-home moms of teens risk kind of babying or infantilizing their semi-adults too much. And, teens really, they do kind of need their space, some time to decompress after school and activities. And often that just happens at the same time the moms are looking for meaningful conversation and bonding with them. And so all of these factors, because of this, it's very common for women to make the decision to go back to work at this point. However, many moms find out very quickly that this is often easier said than done. So that's what we're going to have our conversation about today. How do you do this? How do you go back to reclaim your career, rejoin the workforce after raising kids? All right, so 6 steps. First, well, you need to establish realistic expectations, okay? I'm telling you this because you have to have realistic, what do you hope to do? What do you hope to get at? Because if you don't, you're going to be disappointed. So whether you've been out of the workforce for 5 years or for 15, it doesn't matter because realistically, you're going to need to take a few steps back, all right, before you can then you're going to set yourself up to begin moving forward again, 100%. But you are probably going to have to be realistic and that you're going to have to take a few steps backwards because things are different. Industries have changed, technology has expanded, you haven't been there to grow with it. So you're just going to have to be realistic on where you are going to best fit in just here to begin. Second, once you've decided that you're ready to go back, you need to gain clarity on what it is exactly that you want. So you're going to need to establish your vision for the future. If you haven't done so already, go back and listen to the Just For Me episode on writing your vision statement. I went and checked for you because there are now so very many episodes to look through, and it's episode 36 back in March. Go back and listen or re-listen because this is really an important piece of the puzzle. Even if it's not work that you're looking for, it's always important for us to clarify what our vision is for the future. So you'll need to reflect on everything from, okay, so what type of work environment you're looking for, office, work from home, travel, the number of hours, and the work-home integration opportunities that we were just talking about. You'll have to think about your teens and what needs will your teens still have? And then how is that going to fit in with you going back to work? You have to ask yourself, where do you see yourself progressing career-wise down the road? Because yes, right now, I've said you need to manage your expectations and realize you're going to be moving backwards at first. And you might, just be thrilled at that. But you're not going to want to stay there long. All right. So, what is your long-term plan? What are your ultimate goals? And I get it. That can totally seem overwhelming. But as an aside, keep in mind that this is essentially the same thing that we are asking of our 16, 17, and 18-year-olds. And their brains, they aren't even fully developed yet. So let's put a pin in that conversation for another day. But do note here how overwhelming this question is, even to us. But you're going to have to think next step and step after that. So maybe you might think, when your kids finish college, where do you want to be professionally? I think that seems like a reasonable time frame. So this vision statement is key for moving forward and for creating your brand. But before we get to your brand, okay, third, you need to fill in your deficit holes. All right. So we said you've been out of the workforce for probably a decade, give or take, right? You can see, look around you, look at how everything has changed, how the world has changed. You can even look at your phone alone, right? So think about it. Like, what does your phone look like the last time that you worked, right? That alone physically shows the technological advancements and the growth in the world since you were last working. Again, not trying to overwhelm you, but just it's a way to make you realize that things have changed. Because once you realize the changes that have occurred, yes, you might want to curl up and cry, but that's not what I mean for you to do. But once you realize it, you can find where the gaps are and you can start filling them in. Okay. So maybe you're going to need to take a class or two, or go up for a certification, or attend a conference, or read some books, or do some research. You need to make yourself visibly current on the industry. Okay. And you are going to need to highlight that currency in your resume. All right. One of these deficit gaps is probably in the way that you sell yourself in your job search, because looking for a job isn't the same as it was in the past. The job market is very different. Hiring is very different. So that brings us to fourth, you are going to need to establish your personal brand. Now, I know it probably sounds weird to think of it that way, because you're like, I'm not trying to be an influencer, for heaven's sake. But branding isn't just for celebrities and influencers and businesses. In 2023, if you want to be successful, even if it's just successfully finding yourself a new job or new clients, if you want to be successful, you need to create a personal brand. If you can control your narrative and manage your own message, you're going to be better positioned to achieve your career goals. And you know that those young millennials and those Gen Z candidates that you are going up against, they absolutely have control over their personal brands. And I know this because we literally teach them it. So now let me teach you. Well, at least I'll teach you the quick Cliff's Notes version. Oh, Cliff Notes. Do those even still exist? Do you remember when you go into like Barnes and and there would be that rack with all of the yellow books of Cliff Notes with the black trim? I wonder if they even still exist. But clearly, although I identify as a mid or younger millennial, clearly I have dated myself as the Gen X that I actually am, right? But I'm a young Gen X, like a super young Gen X. So, all right. So the abridged version here. How do we create our personal brand? Well, that vision statement that I told you to create, that's where you're going to start. When you have a well-written vision for your brand, it helps you to consciously move from where you are to where you'd like to be. So, from your vision statement, can you fill in the simple brand statement template? I help X do Y. So for me, I help women raising teenagers understand their family relationships while they're finding out who they are. There's a quote that I read at some point, and I don't remember where, but it's something like, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So for me, listeners, or I guess you, who wouldn't buy into me hosting a family communication podcast, that's not it. They would buy instead into my why. And my why personally is because I want to help women have better relationships with their teens and themselves. So I help X do Y. From here, you should pretty easily be able to figure out what it is that you want to be known for. Okay, remember we have said it's okay to be confident. So be really confident, set your goals high, be lofty in this statement. If you were to become known as the go-to expert in your industry, what would your expertise be? Okay, so if your industry is retail sales, are you the go-to expert on finding women the proper fit in a bra? All right. So can you tell that my retail experience was years at Victoria's Secret? All through college, I worked at Victoria's Secret. Oh, you know what? I know that I have reframing friends who live in Columbus or from Columbus. Okay. So I worked at the Victoria's Secret on Lane Avenue forever. And there were so few shoppers there in the 90s. Like we get like 2 a shift and they would buy a ton of stuff. But the rest of the time was either straightening racks or shopping for myself. So gosh, that was a million years ago. But okay, anyway, say that I had been a district manager. I mean, I wasn't, but for this example, let's pretend that I was. If I wanted to get back into that, I would probably need to set realistic expectations and maybe start out as a store's assistant manager. And then I would move back up the ranks. But I could totally do that if I recognized my vision and my personal brand. So I help women feel confident. I help X do Y. All right. My why might be that if women feel good about themselves from the base of their clothing, then they move throughout their day and through their life, presenting themselves more confidently. And that then helps them to reach their personal goals. You can't feel good about yourself in an fitting bra, right? So I am going to be the industry expert on helping women to determine the right style and fit of bra that makes them feel confident, sexy, and amazing. All right. So that's what I might be trying to do. Now, you may be thinking, oh my God, Jen, do I really need all of that to apply for a job at the mall? Okay. If you're applying for a job at the mall, just probably not. But personally, I know that and I'm guessing you too, you're not applying just for a job at the mall. You're relaunching your career. And this quote unquote job at the mall, it's only the start for you. Maybe you want to move up the ranks, or maybe you want to open your own retail business. But the retail world has changed since you worked in it. So remember, we talked about filling in those deficit gaps. You're filling in that deficit by looking for this job at the mall in order to get a feel for the current market while you plan your own store. Or maybe you are looking to go back into banking or human resource management or something in medical or dental or teaching or whatever. It doesn't matter because the process is going to be the same. Now, a key part of this is also something that we preach to our comm students in everything from branding to interpersonal comm to speech writing, news writing, whatever. Know your audience. Who are you trying to appeal to? One of the biggest mistakes that you can make when you're building your personal brand, I guess just like in life, right? The biggest mistake that you can make is trying to appeal to everyone. We can take that in so many ways, right? In this context, though, it is very important to define your niche, right? Understand the market that you are in. Who is it that you want to serve? And what is your position in this market? Now, to do that, you need to know your audience. If you want to open that retail store, who are you going to be serving? If you want to launch that podcast, who is your audience? If you want to sell real estate, who is your target audience? If you want to go back to teaching, who is your audience? What grades, what type of school, what area? Consider who your audience is, what they need, and how you can help. Your overall messaging should come pretty organically once you have all of this. But just like we teach our students in our integrated marketing classes, when you're doing this for a business or for an organization, and it's going to be the same thing for you. You need to keep your messaging consistent. Once you decide what your message is, use the same message consistently across your platforms. So keep your tone and your personality the same. Use the same headshot, or if it's a business or some type of consulting, use the same logo, use the same colors. Find your unique voice and stay true to it. All right. Now, that's the absolutely perfect segue into our last component of establishing our brand, which is actually also the fifth point in how do you re-enter the workforce list. Okay. Look at how I did that. It was such a perfect little bow I tied here. All right. So, fifth, once you know the vision, the specialty, your brand, now you need to start to sell your product. So, the product, that's you. You need to sell you. To do this, you may need to network, right? Network. Once you have a vision and a brand and a resume, you get that shit out there. Maybe you haven't been in the workforce for like 14 years, but you know what? You know a lot of people who have. So use those interpersonal connections. You just cannot be afraid to put yourself out there. I mean, Jesus, if I can do this here, which still makes me somewhat uncomfortable, only somewhat uncomfortable if I don't actually think about it, because if I think it through, well, it makes me really, really uncomfortable. All right. But if I can do this, you can do that. And I know you can, right? If LinkedIn is new to you, though, you do need to focus on that. Join groups that are relevant to your industry, to your area, apply for jobs, and again, continue to network. All right. And then sixth, be authentic in your communication. Authentically communicate that passion, the passion about your brand. Not only address, but you need to embrace that elephant in the room. You're not going to be able to hide the gap in your resume. So since you can't hide it, own it. Yes, you have been a stay-at-home mom, but no, your brain didn't shrivel up. Your motivation did not die. You have actually acquired skills and experiences that absolutely can be helpful to you in the workplace. So go in, own them, and own your decisions. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you being here today and over these last 51 episodes. Like I said, if you haven't already, go back and listen to part 1 of this episode, which was episode 49, and this week's 50th episode of Jenna Zen. Please remember to follow the show so that you don't miss out on any content. And if you enjoy it, please share it with your friends. That's how we're going to grow our community. If you might consider, I would love if you went in and rated it 5 stars, obvi, and write a review because that will help others find us too. Reach out to me on socials, on Instagram and TikTok at Reframing Me. On Facebook, it's Reframing Me. And join the Facebook group, Reframing Me, the podcast community, to connect with other women who are also raising teens and rediscovering themselves. Until next time, be well, communicate, and own your decisions.